This is Sarah Squires with today's edition of WyoToday Newsroom. As we approach the end of 2025 and look ahead to the new year, here at WyoToday, we're reflecting on our favorite stories of the year. On today's show, we'll look back not just to this past spring, but back through American history to the Second World War. Today's show documents the April dedication of a Riverton monument for the 442nd Infantry Regiment. Senior reporter Marit Guggen shares the history of the renowned unit, its connection to Riverton, and the example they left for us all. Here's Marit with the story.
Call the guard. Attend. Halt. Cast distance. Forward. March.
In April, friends, family, and community members gathered together in Riverton's Veterans Park, there to dedicate a new monument and memorial put up in honor of the 442nd Regimental Combat Team, an all-Japanese-American U.S. Army Infantry Regiment that served during World War II. For its size and length of service, the 442nd was the most highly decorated military unit in American history. American Legion Post 19 in Riverton played an instrumental role in installing the new memorial in Riverton's Veterans Park. Here's Legion Post 19's Warren Hess speaking about the history of the 442 and how it began.
It was on the 5th of June in 1942 when the Hawaiian Provision Battalion of the National Guard were moved to Oakland, California, where they were then designated as the 100th Infantry Battalion, or in the Hawaiian vernacular, one puka puka, which means 100. The orders read, all cadre men must be American citizens of Japanese ancestry who have resided in the United States since birth. Ultimately, 2,686 men from Hawaii and more than 1,500 men from the mainland U.S. internment camps made up the 442nd Battalion in 1943. About 4,000 men. And these men, overall, over 10,000 Japanese Americans served in World War II. These brave and courageous warriors, despite the problems they faced, compiled a record of success that is rarely matched, if ever, in the annals of military history. They fought from the hills of France through Italy, right up to Hitler's face.
Here's Ara Newland speaking at the dedication ceremony in April about her family's ties with the 442nd. In addition to being a descendant of someone who served in the 442nd, Ara Newland is the director of Heart Mountain Interpretive Center. Located at the site of the Heart Mountain Internment Camp, it is dedicated to preserving this chapter of Wyoming and the United States history, as well as the experiences of the people who were incarcerated there.
There were about 800 men from Heart Mountain who served in the 442nd, in the 100th Battalion, and in the Military Intelligence Service, all while their families remained incarcerated at Heart Mountain. So honoring the courage and patriotism and sacrifice of these Japanese American soldiers, it's my job, but it's also deeply personal to me. My grandfather and two of my great-uncles served in the 442nd. Actually, that's my grandpa on the lower left of the mural, and you'll hear from my mother in a few minutes. Also, my grandmother's family was incarcerated at Heart Mountain. And perhaps most importantly, I'm a Riverton girl, born and raised here in Riverton, proud graduate of Riverton High School. And just this week, there was a group of students from Riverton Middle School who were up visiting the Heart Mountain Interpretive Center. And it's just so moving to me to see my hometown kind of come together around my family and around this story.
Okay, I'm Sheila Newland, and I came here in 1972. I was born in Denver, and I grew up in Logan, Utah. My dad grew up in Green River, Wyoming, and he and his family, all of them graduated from Green River High School.
The story of the 442nd Regimental Combat Team starts in Ocean Away in Hawaii on the morning of December 7th, 1941. The attacks on Pearl Harbor stunned and horrified America.
My dad grew up in Green River,
Japanese
Wyoming,
Americans were faced with
and
prejudice
he and his family,
and fear.
all of them
Families
graduated
living along
from
the coast were
Green River
forced
High
out of
School.
their homes and sent to government-run camps in the interior of the country, places like Heart Mountain. In Hawaii, Japanese Americans who had experienced the bombing firsthand were eager to volunteer to fight those who had attacked their home, and quickly found that they couldn't. Riverton Sheila Newland's father and two of her uncles served in the 442nd during World War II. Her father, George Sonata, is among those depicted on the new mural installed in Riverton's Veterans Park.
After high school, when he graduated in 1939, he worked as a section head and inspection crew for the Union Pacific Railroad in Green River. When Pearl Harbor was attacked, he and 20 others of Japanese ancestry were told, "Don't come back to work." Do you know anyone who was suddenly dismissed from a job without any advance notice? Imagine how that would impact them and their families, especially if the family depended upon that person as the wage earner. My dad's father had already passed away, so there was a young family of 8. My dad was the oldest one, so he and the family depended upon his wages of the Union Pacific for their family. Japanese Americans were incarcerated from Alaska, Washington, Oregon, California, Arizona, and Hawaii. Although those in Wyoming were allowed to stay in their homes, they were investigated by the FBI. Imagine an FBI agent coming to your home and saying, "We're going to take anything of yours that looks like it might be from the country of the enemy." So when they knew that the FBI was coming, they had to either bury or burn or hide anything from Japan, such as books, photo albums, clothing, artwork, any family records. They were Americans, but they were labeled as the enemy. And he wanted to join the army, but when the war started, they did not allow Japanese Americans, even though the American part was the most important. But they had the Wyoming State Guard, and that only occurred during wartime. So he was able to join the Wyoming State Guard for a few months until the 442 asked for volunteers. And he and others were very eager to prove their loyalty as they joined the 442.
At this time, I would like to introduce again our great governor of the state of Wyoming, the Honorable Mark Gordon, who will have some words to say for us.
It is an honor today to be here on this beautiful day to think about the men who made up the 442nd. And you think about the challenges they face not only here on the mainland, but also because when they first were, as you were talking about, the initial part coming from Hawaii and the Hawaiian National Guard, Hawaii was not a state at that time. And so there was a little bit of struggle between those who were from Hawaii and those who were from the internment camps here. And it was only until they came to visit some of the mainland camps and understood the circumstances that they began to work together as a unit.
Here's Sheila Newland.
Basic training was in Fort Shelby, Mississippi, and he and a group of Hawaiians were in the anti-tank company. One of his Army friends in basic training was named Shiroku Yamamoto. From Mississippi, they went to France, and then they went to Italy. And when we see that the faces on any of these murals, on this one or on this one, when you come up, think about one of those people as maybe your relative, as maybe your grandpa or your uncle. Think of these as real people, not just pictures.
While the 442nd and its storied 100th Battalion and 522nd Field Artillery Battalion saw fighting all across the European theater, there is one particular incident that stands out and has even been the stuff of Hollywood film. In late October 1944, approximately 275 Texan soldiers were cut off behind German lines. As supplies began to dwindle, rescue attempts were made and failed, made and failed. The 442nd was nearby, but meant to be on rest. Here's Governor Mark Gordon.
My great uncle said if we are to remain a great nation, a few of us are going to be called by the Creator to defend our nations, to defend our country. My uncle was George Patton. And at that time, if you remember, we were in Europe, and you think about the 442nd. It had just liberated a town in France when it was called back to rescue the lost battalion. 200 Texas soldiers.
The fight to liberate France could be a brutal grind, and the 442nd had just experienced intense fighting in nearby French towns. Its 100th Battalion, nicknamed the Purple Heart Battalion for the large number of Purple Hearts it received, had been cut off behind enemy lines for several days in the freezing October rain and had suffered heavy losses. Nonetheless, 2 days into their rest, Major General John Dahlquist ordered them back into the field to attempt to rescue the lost Texan battalion. From October 26th until October 30th, the 442nd struggled uphill against a barrage of gunfire, mortars, and artillery.
800 were casualties in that fight, facing tanks, machine gun nests, willing to make suicide runs to try to make sure they could protect and liberate and free those 200 soldiers, which they did. That commitment, I think, also speaks to what John F. Kennedy said when he said the cost of freedoms is always high, but it is a price that Americans have always been willing to pay. And the one path that we can never take is the path of surrender. The 442nd demonstrated extraordinary valor.
The 442nd wasn't done when it made it up to the top of the hill and brought the Texans back. Dahlquist ordered them to continue to pursue the Germans rather than return to rest. 2 weeks later, the regiment finally got some downtime. Dahlquist called them out for a parade review. When he saw the small number of men who turned out, he was furious and demanded to know why so few of them had shown up. That's all that was left of the unit, he was told. The next day, Dahlquist sent them back out once more. Here's Sheila Newland.
One of the other units of the 442nd was a special technical unit called a 522. And that it's a 522 that is best known for the rescue of the Texas Lost Battalion. Did you know that the 522 was also involved in the rescue of hundreds of Jewish prisoners on the death march to Dachau? One of those rescuers was my California uncle on my mother's side, my uncle Clarence Matsumura. And you can read his story in this book, which I donated to the Riverton Library. It's called Light Wind Candle. This is the story of how Japanese Americans found prisoners on the death march, buried in the snow, some dead, some alive. This is a fascinating story, so you can check this out at the Riverton Library. And it was written by a young Jewish Lithuanian boy who was just lying in the snow, and my uncle found him. While Clarence was rescuing prisoners in Germany, where were his parents? Where were they? Heart Mountain. So here we have my dad, George, in France and Italy, Clarence pulling prisoners out of the snow, rescuing them, my grandparents, and my other aunts and uncles in Heart Mountain behind barbed wire, not able to escape and having to find a life for themselves there.
In total, the 442nd received 2 Meritorious Service Unit commendations, 7 Presidential Unit citations, 15 Soldiers Medals, 21 Medals of Honor, 22 Legion of Merit Awards, 29 Distinguished Service Crosses, 36 Army commendations, 87 Division commendations, 560 Silver Stars, 4,000 Bronze Stars, and 9,486 Purple Hearts.
In 1945, my dad was wounded in combat and he earned a Bronze Star and a Purple Heart. He became a lifetime member of the VFW, Veterans of Foreign Wars, and the DAV, Disabled American Veterans. And behind the monument, you will see a list of the different honors that the 442 received.
Here's Scott Ratliff, an enrolled member of the Eastern Shoshone Tribe and a longtime friend of the Newland family. A veteran himself, Ratliff served in Vietnam.
This great group of people, the 442, were unique in that they didn't have the same privileges that we had because they were born Japanese American. And yet in 20 years from the time World War II took place till I went to Vietnam, that had changed. I didn't serve with a lot of Japanese Americans, but the 2 that I did serve with was very much a part of our unit. And so it's been something I've strove for all my life, is to be tolerant of others. We don't have to all look the same, but inside we have the same heart. So it's important that we honor these great people the way we are today. And I want to finally say thank you to Ed McCausland for helping put this together and allowing me to be here in front of you. Tahoe.
Here's Ara Newland.
Heart Mountain, the foundation is a success because it's been a joint effort from the start by former incarcerees and their descendants, but also, importantly, by Wyoming locals who saw this historic site and said, you know, there's something here that needs to be preserved and there's something that needs to be remembered, all in the hope that our country can learn from its mistakes, as you said. And this effort here with this monument has likewise been a joint effort. On behalf of my family and on the Heart Mountain Wyoming Foundation, I just want to express my deepest gratitude to Ed McCausland and American Legion Post 19. We are so moved by this honor to have a permanent recognition of the 442nd here. So while Heart Mountain was once a place of rupture and loss, it is now a beautiful place of connection. And that is because of all of you and all who have come together to tell this story. So thank you so much.
Here's Warren Hess.
In all holy scriptures tell us that no greater love has any man than he be willing to lay down his life for his friend. The 5th fold of the 13 folds of the American flag in doing military honors for any occasion states that it is a tribute to our country, for in our country and dealing with other countries, may she always be right. But it is still our country, right or wrong. The point I want to make at this time is that as humans, we're prone to make many mistakes. And in all of that, we do. And in many ways, that explains many things that have happened in our nation's past. Because these things are past, our part now is to learn from them and learn from those mistakes. Ask for forgiveness and never again repeat them as we move on into the future. So it was for those of us in the earlier stages of World War II, because in the chaos of these tense times, we all know many bad mistakes were made because of so much misunderstanding and prejudice that was prevalent for these times. Hopefully, we have learned and profited from the things and moved away and on, never to repeat them again.
The motto of the 442nd was "Go for broke." At the time, it was Hawaiian slang. Now, the phrase has entered the general American vocabulary. We all know what it means to go for broke, to put everything on the line, but few have put that into practice the way that the men of the 442nd did. The story of the 442nd is a story of courage, of valor, and of service. The dedication that they showed to their country was incredible. And at the same time, their families were often faced with prejudice or even incarceration back home. At the conclusion of the war, many Japanese families who had been moved into internment camps went home only to find that their property had been occupied by their neighbors, and it was no longer their own. In 1951, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer made a movie called Go for Broke about the 442nd and featuring a cast that included some men who had actually served in the regiment. Its title card displayed a quote from Franklin Delano Roosevelt. "The principle on which this country was founded and by which it has always been governed is that Americanism is a matter of the mind and heart. Americanism is not, and never was, a matter of race or ancestry." The men of the 442nd proved that to be true, laying everything on the line to serve their country. Here's Governor Mark Gordon.
It's an extraordinary story, and I think when you think about how beautiful this area is and how really sacred you have made, Riverton has made this memorial park. It is a good day. It is a beautiful day, and we have the Creator to thank for it. And we have the men who have fought and women who have fought to preserve our freedoms to thank. And it is appropriate that we are here today. God bless America. God bless Wyoming. Keep it free. Thank you.
In celebration of Memorial Day, we salute the men of the 442nd and all other veterans who put everything on the line in service of their country. Their legacy of honor and courage lives on in towns and hearts across America, including right here in Riverton. May is Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and we also recognize the challenges endured by their families back home, who were faced with hostility and suspicion based simply on the color of their skin. To learn more about the Japanese American experience during World War II, go to the Heart Mountain Interpretive Center or visit their website, heartmountain.org.
That was senior reporter Mark Gukin with a throwback to one of our favorite stories of the year. Today's show is brought to you by Porter's Mountain View Supply. If grilling is part of your lifestyle, Porter's has you covered. Porter's carries quality grills built for flavor, performance, and durability. Whether you are cooking for a crowd or just firing it up for the weeknight, their team can help you find the grill that fits how you cook and how often you use it. They also stock a full lineup of grilling accessories, including pellets, charcoal, seasonings, tools, thermometers, covers, and cleaning supplies. From low and slow smoking to quick and easy backyard meals, Porter's has the products that help you get better results every time. You'll find Porter's Mountain View Supply at 750 East Sunset Drive in Riverton. Give them a call at 307-856-6066 or stop in and check out their grills and accessories today.